And I think that also really speaks to, there's so much suffering in work. And
Yeah.
so, how are you allowing the suffering to shape you and push you deeper into relationship with Jesus? Or are you just wanting your circumstances to change? And so I think that also is a big part of the heart piece is,
Yeah.
yeah, we go into really broken institutions and we want to change them, understandably, but sometimes God leaves us in them because he wants them to form us in certain ways.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Up Next. Today, I have once again, who's been with me on this podcast a couple times already, Lauren Gill, Senior Director of the Global Faith and Work Initiative at Redeemer City to City. Lauren, how long have you lived in New York for?
Oh gosh, I have lived here since 2002, so that's what is that? 23 years?
23 years. Where
Yeah.
was home originally for you?
So home was originally a rural area of Kentucky called Hardinsburg. So it's 60 miles west of Louisville, and yeah, totally different experience than New York, but both of them have been very formative. So happy to have had
When
the
you
rural and the city experience.
and when you moved from Kentucky, what made you move to New York? Was it for your acting career to go to New York?
Yes. So I felt very called to go to New York. I felt very much in prayer that it was the place that I was supposed to go. And I went to NYU to study acting, but I was worried about being terribly homesick. So I don't think I would have gone if I had not just felt a really strong spiritual sense through prayer that that was something God wanted me to do. And I needed to be obedient
Hmm.
to that, even though I was quite terrified.
Yeah, yeah. Lauren, how did someone who grew up in rural Kentucky develop a love for acting?
That's a really good question. I think I just always loved stories, and I remember
Hmm.
watching them when I was young and wanting to be a part of the stories that I was watching on television. And so I remember we actually went to Disney World, my grandmother, my mom, and
Hmm.
I,
Hmm.
when I was in kindergarten, and they were filming a Muppet movie, and
Yeah,
they needed an older woman to sit between the Statler and Waldorf puppets on a trolley, and theirs was sick, and so they asked my grandmother to be
really? Uh-huh.
in the film, and my mom and I were sort of in the background. But I remember at the time being excited because I had already decided before that experience that I wanted to be in entertainment, and
Yeah, yeah.
so something in me just at a very young age really wanted to do that, really felt compelled by that. Yeah, so that
Yeah.
was my first
Isn't
that was
it,
my first real experience, yeah.
and Lauren, isn't it funny how a lot of times you look back at your childhood and there are certain memories, like for you, your grandmother filming a Muppets movie that still stand out. And for God, for some reason, God allows those memories to just stick. And after all these years, you still remember it.
Absolutely, yeah. That was completely, um, yeah, something I remember that day very vividly, yeah.
Yeah. When you came to New York, what was your first impressions to New York, and has that changed over time?
I think my first impression, the first week that you're here for college, they take you around to do lots of fun things.
Hmm.
So I was initially just really excited by all of the activity and the energy and being able to go see shows and performances and interact with different people because there was just always something to do because the place I grew up, that's not the case. There's just not as much to do. Um, but I think that wore off fairly quickly, and I got quite homesick. Um, and I did get over that, but it took probably a year to sort of get
Yeah,
over, yeah,
yeah.
to sort of make the emotional adjustment. Um, I think New York has changed a lot in 20 years, 23 years. I'm since I moved here. There's areas of the city that, when I first moved here, my acting classes were on the far west end of Manhattan, and
Yeah.
it was not a very nice place. And now there's like the High Line there. It's like lovely.
Hmm.
So it's changed so much. And I go back to the areas where I used to have my dorms, and all of the buildings, all of the stores,
Yeah.
all of the
Hmm.
restaurants are
Hmm.
different in just a
Hmm.
20-year
Hmm.
period. So I think that's what's compelling about New York, is that it's always changing. It's always moving. There's sort of this frenetic pace.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's attractive to me. And it was when I came, and it's still that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk to me about your acting career. Walk me through all that has happened in those during that part of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I did a lot of, when I graduated from college, I was primarily focused on stage. And so I did a variety of things. I did musical theater, I did some regional theater, I did some Shakespeare. And I think then at some point I wanted to have more control over the stories that I was part of. You don't have a lot of agency when you're an actor. Auditions come to you, um, and you can take them or not. But I mean, the opportunities are so few and far between that you're probably going to take them, but
Yeah.
you have no agency over like what your role is in a story. And so I got to a point where I wanted to produce my own work. And so I focused on that for a while. I produced a few films, and I really enjoyed that because I got to choose the story, hire the crew, and really, sort of shape it from start to finish. But I now have young children, and so I
Yeah.
feel like at this stage in life, some people can do theater with young children, but I feel like for me, it's not the best stage of life to do that. I want to be there on nights and weekends,
Mm,
put them to
hmm.
bed
Hmm.
and see them, and that's when plays happen. Um, so I still feel like I can kind of keep my hand in it by
Yeah.
auditioning for small things in film or
Yeah.
TV. Yeah.
And Lauren, like specifically for plays and also TV and all that stuff, you're gone literally. Does that mean you're gone in the afternoon, you're rehearsing, and then you got to perform, and that's the entire night right there?
No, so your rehearsal period is different than your show period. So your
Hmm.
rehearsal period, it can vary, but a lot of times you'll do it during the day.
Yeah.
And then when the shows start, they'll be in the evenings or on weekends, right?
Got it.
But it's very difficult because before I had children, it's very difficult because you need a day job or a stable job to pay your bills. And when you're rehearsing, it can't be during the day.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
when you're doing the shows, it can't be at night. So it's really tricky, I think, for
Mm,
performers to figure out a way to make life sustainable, especially in a city like New York.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Got it. Two questions, two follow-up questions. Looking back, one, what was your favorite role? And
Mhm.
two, how did your role in acting prepare you to doing what you're doing right now with Global Faith and Work?
Yeah, I think my favorite role, I'm not sure. I always really enjoyed doing Shakespeare plays. When I
Yeah.
was younger, I played Prospero at one point, which I was completely wrong for. There was no reason for me to play the father magician patriarch in The Tempest, but I had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think I really enjoyed that, and I liked that part too because there was so much spirituality to it.
Hmm.
He sort of conjures the spirits, and to me, it very very much the language sort of connected to my faith. Um, I think that doing that really prepared me, frankly, to just be someone who could do a lot of things at once. I think when you're an artist, you're always trying to do other things to sustain your art. You have to wear a lot of different hats. And I think that being an actor gives you the ability to have empathy really well, because when you enter into a character, you have to see the world from their perspective. And so I think that really helps me now at the Global Faith and Work Initiative, because when I um, when I think about what we're teaching, and does this impact the
Hmm.
person
Hmm.
who's a transit worker, a banker, a farmer, a doctor, a lawyer, um, I can sort of put myself mentally into the spot of those people and say this resonates or doesn't. And so I think it just gives you a real tool of empathy
Yeah.
that um, that is helpful no matter what you end up doing.
Yeah. How did you get involved with what Redeemer is doing with the Faith and Work initiative?
So I originally came into it as an artist because I in 2009 I participated in the Gotham Fellowship, which was led at
Yeah.
the time by David Kim, and I was an artist.
Mhm.
And I also had a day job at a hedge fund. And so I took that program, and then I later asked David to give me a job at the Center for Faith and Work. And when I worked at the Center for Faith and Work, I worked mostly with artists on thinking through
Mm-hmm.
how to how does being a Christian change the type of art you make? How does being a
Hmm.
Christian in this space, how do you draw on those resources for the difficult parts of being a filmmaker or a painter or a writer or whatever it is? And then I eventually moved over to City in 2018. And my current role is working with pastors and ministry leaders so that they can in turn equip their congregants for faith and work ministry.
Yeah. How for you a lot of times, and maybe it was just primarily because of the kids, how did you know it was time to move away from acting, something you've dreamed about ever since you were a little kid, to now working and overseeing the Global Faith and Work Initiative?
Well, I still do the acting on the side a bit. So I still have an Asian manager. I still do auditions. I mean, the thing is the industry has changed a lot.
Yeah.
And so now it's actually much easier than it used to be to
Okay. Yeah.
have a full-time job doing, because what happened with COVID is that everything moved from being in person to on tape.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, you get an audition, they'll say, tape it in your house and send it to us in 3 days.
Really?
And
Okay.
yep. And you can, you tape it on your iPhone, you Zoom with someone to read the other part with you, or coach you on it. And so it's not like before COVID, I would have to leave my office job to go wherever
Yeah.
in New York City, to audition for something. So the industry's changed a lot. And so actually, in some ways, it's a lot easier to do it on top of something else now, than it was before COVID, I think. Yeah.
Very.
So it's worked out okay.
And Lauren, literally, a lot of times they'll tell you, okay, film me a scene in which you're interacting or arguing with the boss of your company. Go film it and send it in. Is that literally how it happens?
No, they give you a script. They
Yeah.
say, here's a script, and, memorize the lines and, or put it on a teleprompter, um, and, uh, and film it with someone and send it into us.
Okay, got it. Very, very good. And also, Lauren, for those who are not familiar with the Global Faith and Work Initiatives, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the Global Faith and Work Initiative is part of Redeemer City to City, which is the organization that was started by Tim Keller to accelerate gospel movement in global cities. And we work with pastors and ministry leaders who want to put faith and work into their churches. And we do that by creating resources, training, consulting, and convening leaders.
Yeah, very good. And would you say a lot of times, even with all your conversations with faith and work, are people getting it? Like in the US, there's so many different faith and work initiatives, and there are
Mhm.
certain pockets in different parts of the world. Is this becoming more and more a common thing, or are you still feeling like people still may not necessarily get it in other parts of the world?
No, I think what's been so encouraging to me is, we have a catalyst in each region. And so we'll have like
Hmm.
a South Asian faith and work catalyst, a European one, East Asia, Africa. And they will do that on the ground work in that region. But I've really been encouraged by the ways, there are certain aspects of the faith and work movement that are stronger in other places. Um,
Yeah.
and certain aspects that are stronger in the US. But I mean, the work that happens in South Asia is they're so focused on entrepreneurs and
Hmm. Hmm.
really, you know, just how to accelerate these ecosystems where people are just deeply creative and entrepreneurial, and that's incredible. And then our person who leads the Latin America Faith and Work Initiative, um, he has talked to me about how a lot of the mercy and justice stuff that I think we started thinking through a few years ago in the faith and workspace was much more intrinsic in some of these Latin American countries because of the
Got
Catholic
it. Yeah, yeah,
influence.
yeah.
And so there was a natural sense of how is what you're doing impacting the poor and the marginalized that I think really had not happened in the faith and work conversation in the
Interesting.
US
Yeah, yeah,
until
yeah,
more
yeah,
recently. So yeah, I think that, what's beautiful about global Christianity, right, is that different contexts bring out different different aspects in more striking ways.
yeah,
So it's been really lovely and a privilege to sort of get to have
yeah,
a seat where I get to see all of the various global expressions of the faith and work movement, as I'm sure you have
yeah.
through your work as well at Resource
And,
Global.
and Lauren, a lot of times I find myself less as the president of Resource Global, but more as a facilitator,
Hmm.
making sure the voices are heard. The folks over in Indonesia, the folks over in Malaysia, but then now you have Brazil. Everyone is at the seat of the table, and now you got to encourage everyone to express what their thoughts are. And you know this in the Asian context, being Asian, is I
Hmm.
walk into Asia, I'm older, I'm an American, I'm male, automatically they're going to defer to me. But I got to get to a point where they're comfortable enough to tell me what they're thinking and give me their thoughts on their insights in the context of what they're dealing with.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's really lovely, and I definitely have moved my way of thinking to say I'm trying to facilitate conversation among our global
Yeah,
leaders, not dictate what I think is best for a particular region or
yeah,
context.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually is my next question for you is even as you work with all of these different global leaders, what's some tips for success that you found in terms of getting each of these global city leaders to have ownership, but also express their thoughts to you and for you to understand how to lead in their context?
Yeah. I think that one thing that we've found really consistent across the different contexts is we want people to see that faith and work is a lens
Yeah,
through which their congregants view the world, right? Work
yeah,
is a
yeah, yeah.
context through which people see their lives.
Mhm.
And so I think a lot of times we think about faith and work as, okay, I need to add that as a class or
Yep,
as
yep,
a
yep,
book
yep, yep.
study, or, we have to have like a big initiative around this. But really, if you preach a sermon and give an example about, all of us have heard countless sermons where there's like a marriage example, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Example of sin or a parenting example. But if you build in work examples, work as a context in the way that you're talking about discipling people and shaping them, then I think that has real dividends and it doesn't require extra work. It doesn't
Mm-hmm,
it doesn't
mm-hmm.
require building a new thing.
Yeah, yeah, very, very good. Which leads us to your book. What made you and Missy decide to write this book?
Yeah, so Missy and I wrote Faith and Work, Galvanizing Your Church for Everyday Impact because I think we wanted to dispel the notion that to do faith and work, you as a pastor could just get to it at some point and it would be this big add on and you would need extra staff or extra programming or extra, tithe money to build that into a church ecosystem. And so we wanted to just make it clear that there were really simple ways you could build faith and work into any church,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and say, here's everything you need to do that so that it doesn't have to feel like a heavy lift. Here's
Yeah,
songs that you can give to your worship leader. Here's prayers that you can, build into your liturgy. It's all here. You don't need
yeah,
to feel like you have to add on a massive mountain of work for your church
yeah,
because we know that
yeah.
pastors have enough on their plate.
Yeah, yeah. And I find even with the church I go to, the pastor will feel like the faith and work thing is a 4 week sermon series. That's it.
Right.
Or they say, okay, we're going to have a special Sunday school class or after Sundays for about 5 weeks. And no, it's just part of the DNA. It's how you teach. It's what you share. It's the examples that you use. All of those things, which I love about your book.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree.
Did you like as you're hearing feedback from different people on the book, what is one thing that you find that pastors are learning and say, wow, this is one practical thing we could really apply? And secondly, what is one thing you're surprised by the reaction in the book?
Yeah, I think we talk about in the book a survey done by Gallup called "What the Whole Wide World Is Thinking," where they surveyed 160 countries, and found that the most important thing to people all across those different contexts was that they wanted a good job, that there
Yeah.
was, and that they wanted their children to have a good job, they wanted their children's children to have a good job, and that they listed that as the most important thing. And I think when we share that with pastors, that feels like a real light bulb for them to see
Mm-hmm.
that no matter what the context is, this is very important to people. Um, because I think a lot of times, not all the time, some pastors are bivocational or maybe they moved into
Yeah.
ministry from
Yeah.
another place. But if someone has always been in ministry, right? And if someone, went to seminary and then has always participated in ministry, I think it can be difficult for them to
Yes.
conceptualize
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
how
Yeah. Yeah.
formative secular work is for their people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we try to just be really practical and say your people will spend 2 hours a week at church max, probably, if they're attending church every week and an extra class or something. So that's maybe 100 hours a year. And they're going to be at work 2,200 hours a year if they're working 40
Correct.
hours. So you want to activate that 2,200 hours for Jesus, right? You don't just
Mm-hmm.
want the 100 hours to be the place that they're missional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very good. Now, for you, when you and Missy worked on this book, did you guys sit there and write out the themes and work on it together, or did you write one chapter? She wrote one chapter. How did you guys go about writing the book?
Yeah, I mean, we had been teaching this material together for a long time, and I think we pretty intrinsically knew which material was best taught by the other person. And so Missy has more of a business consulting background. She worked for Boston Consulting Group,
Mm-hmm.
so she
Mm-hmm.
makes these lovely 2x2s, these diagrams, and thinks
Yeah.
through these big concepts in digestible ways. I, came from CFW and the Redeemer world. I've been in the Redeemer Tim Keller world a long time. And then I worked at the counseling center,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
got
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
counseling licensure. So I think it was just sort of natural for us to say all of the sort of narrative or heart renewal or, counseling ecosystem pieces, Lauren writes, all of the more businessy, um, pieces, Missy writes, and then we would sort of hand off and make edits and
Yeah.
suggestions back and forth. But we kind of just intuitively knew how to divide it up well. Yeah, and some
Yeah.
of it
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly came down to we want to write this section, and this person's on vacation this week, so who's gonna crank out a first draft of the biblical narrative through
Yeah.
work, and then hand it over to the other person to have them do some edits. Yeah.
Did you find that there were certain concepts in the book as you guys were writing it that you disagreed on, or concepts that you said, man, we really need to make sure this is in the book and this is highlighted?
I don't think there were concepts that we disagreed on. I do think every now and then we would um, disagree on like more structural things.
Mm-hmm.
Like what I think a big conversation that was really difficult was sort of what do we talk about first?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we had a fantastic editor named Anna Robinson, and she was really helpful with that. And I think like I really wanted us to do like the heart community world framework first because that's like a key framework that we've used to talk about faith and work for years. And I think Anna very much was like, you need to, talk about the problem first. And then walk us through the biblical narrative and show us that
Mm-hmm.
work is in the Bible,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
before the fall. And then you can talk about some of these key frameworks. But you need to
Yeah.
walk
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
the biblical story first. So I think we really relied on Anna to help us discern what the best structure for the book was. We sort of wrote out all the pieces and had all the pieces, but didn't know how to make them all fit together
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
until we had Anna with us.
And then you also just mentioned, give me a preview of the heart community framework.
Oh, sure. So Heart Community World, essentially it's a triad that says how does the gospel inform each of these areas, and we think change happens in cities really at three levels. And so the first is the personal
Hmm.
relationship
Hmm.
level, right? That's what we call the heart level. And so that is, how does the gospel change my relationship to work through my relationship with Jesus, right? And so how are my idols showing up at work? How does my personal sin and brokenness show up at
Hmm.
work? And I
Hmm.
may have to repent of that. Am I being prayerful about my work decisions? Am I reading scripture and getting, insight from my personal relationship with Jesus and God's word that informs how I think about my work. And then once that is in place, we can move out into relationship, right? And that's the
Yeah.
community piece. How does the gospel change my relationships at work in terms of my customers, my coworkers, my colleagues, even my competitors? The way I interact with them should look different if I have been changed by Jesus Christ than someone else, ideally, right? And then once we have that relational piece, then we can move into thinking about, how does the gospel change my industry? And what is God using my industry or field or sphere of society uniquely to do in my city versus someone else? And, God is using education very differently than finance, than art, than transit, than technology, to communicate something about his glory in New York City, right? Those are all things that are doing different things. And so we want people to sort of walk through a process of thinking about, what was the original creational goodness of this
Yeah.
field, and
Yeah.
how has sin impacted that? And now, how can I, as someone in that field, work against those sinful, broken areas potentially, in
Yeah.
ways
Yeah. Yeah.
large and small?
And the part that at the beginning of the heart of the individual and the leader is, I love what even Catherine has taught me, that too often, a lot of times, we're looking ahead and going, doing. Many of our young leaders don't do a very good job of reflecting about how God has been working through their life. And that
Mm,
is one thing that I've seen across all of those things. They're always wanting to go ahead. But how has God shown up? What has He been teaching you? What are the hard issues that you have to come through? What are some of the things that you've failed and succeeded in that has set you up to be who you are right now? Lauren, even my 10 years building cell towers for 10 years prepared me for what I'm doing now.
of course. And I think that also really speaks to, there's so much suffering in work. And so
Yeah.
how are you allowing the suffering to shape you
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and push you deeper into relationship with Jesus? Or are you just wanting your circumstances to change? You know?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and so I think that also is a big part of the heart piece. Is,
Yeah.
yeah, we go into really broken institutions and we want to change them, understandably. But sometimes God leaves us in them because he wants
Hmm.
he wants them to form us in certain ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've also heard some of these things. There are some people who are sitting here who are at a dead end job. They hate their job.
Hmm.
And now, a decade later, you look back and say, wow, Lord, this is what you were trying to do during that period of
Hmm.
time when you kept me in that job.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think everyone has those stories, right? I worked at a hedge fund for 3 years, and I was sort of making backup copies of backup copies. And God taught me a lot through that experience. And I also look back now. I worked for a while at an outpatient psychiatric unit here in New York City,
Hmm.
and it was a really difficult job. It was a really difficult context. And I think that I left every day deeply frustrated because the people I sat across from, there wasn't much you could do to help them except medication management. So make sure they were
Yeah,
taking their
yeah, yeah,
medication.
yeah, yeah.
And so you would sit across from them week after week, and they were schizophrenic, had schizoaffective disorder, a lot of issues, and they would, you know, um, describe the same hallucinations or delusions week after week. And I would leave feeling so frustrated because I felt like I was not helping move the needle on their care at all. And I look back at that job now and think, God really just wanted me to be present with these people who were really suffering,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
sit and be like a consistent presence in their lives week after week and listen to them. And I had this idol of productivity, or this need to sort of be a helper, which I think is
Mm-hmm.
okay, but I would leave work frustrated every day because I wasn't helping them in the way that I thought I should.
Yeah.
Um, but really,
Wonderful.
they just needed presence.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it is that learning of being present that I bet you to this day, you still apply that even as you work with all these leaders from around the world.
Yeah, I think now through that, have gotten somewhat better about saying, I don't have to fix a problem. I just,
Yeah.
you know, I can be a good listener. Yeah.
It's probably, I bet you it's probably helped you as you've dealt with your 5-year-old and 7-year-old too.
I would like to think so, although maybe not as much as it should have. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Lauren, you've done, as we start wrapping up here, you've done so many of these interviews, you and Missy, you by yourself and all that stuff. Everyone's been asking you all these questions. If there are one or two questions that you wish people would ask you about your book or your life, what would those be?
Um, yeah, I think yeah, I think the thing I'm most proud of about the book is just that I feel it's really practical. And so I do hope that people will pick it up and understand that it's sort of the thing that you can do as little or as much as you want. There's enough in it that, you can take away something and build it into your church right away if you're a pastor. But I also understand that because it has a lot of material in it, there's the temptation to
Hmm.
not pick it up, right? Because
Yeah.
I think, someone said to me recently, a pastor was like, well, it's a lot to sort of like
Hmm.
try and
Hmm.
do all that. And we sort of say that in the introduction. We say, if you don't want to read through this whole thing, just flip to the back. There's a sort of quick starts section, or I think we call it the hacks section.
Hmm.
And you can just like pick a couple of things and build them into your Sunday
Yeah.
service. And so I think that that's something that I just really, as I've done all these interviews, have wanted to highlight, is just that
Yeah.
doing one small thing, right, is better than not doing anything. And I think that's really what we tried to do with the book, is say, it can be a buffet or it can be a la carte.
Yeah. 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 Lauren, have you found that the faith and work conversation is different when you're talking, especially in the US, with Caucasians compared to Asian Americans, compared to African Americans and Latinos?
I think so. Although I think the heart community world framework still holds up.
Hmm.
I think that there's definitely, of course, cultural idolatries,
Hmm.
right? I think, I can speak from like a white Kentucky upbringing. My idolatry is very achievement oriented.
Hmm.
There's a lot of identity in title. There's identity in success. There's identity in like how much money you make, right? And so I think those are the idols that I constantly have to be sort of watching out for and repenting of. And I think that other cultures have different idolatries, but that all still speaks to relationship with Jesus, heart renewal, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's been what's interesting to me, is that as I see our global leaders sort of play things out, um, the framework, I think, holds up, but the way it is contextualized among
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
cultures, different
Yeah.
races,
Yeah.
different socioeconomic levels, right? And
Yeah.
that's one thing we talk about in the book, is that, there's a temptation. There are idols at a higher socioeconomic level than for someone who is working in a more marginalized context with less agency.
Correct. Correct. Correct.
And
Correct.
I
Correct.
think a lot of times there can be identity idolatries in the former, but the latter, sometimes we are not good about saying all work has dignity, right? And
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
people, I think, feel, okay, well, I do this job and I just do it to do it. and it doesn't mean anything, and who cares? And one of the examples we give in the book is the idea of a janitor, which I think
Hmm.
societally
Hmm.
is not really held in esteem. But of course, if there weren't janitors, we would all, be sick with disease, right?
Hmm.
Because nothing would be clean. And so thinking about like, well, what does this role mean in God's economy, and why does it deserve dignity? Because it's a job that
Yeah.
God sees as
Yeah.
contributing to
Yeah.
His
Yeah.
creation.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Lauren, I thought of this. I was literally in Dallas at a hotel, and there was this one lady who worked part-time there who took out the morning breakfast and served all the food. Lauren, she was the nicest individual. Her customer service was so good. I
yeah,
had to talk to her about her story. And she was a
yeah.
Christ follower, but
Oh,
literally
amazing.
she made the free breakfast over a Hampton Inn. And then she literally went to each person sitting at each table. Good morning. Can I get you a cup of coffee? Can I get you orange juice? Do you need a refill? Can I get you another plate of food? Her service was so exceptional. And I'm
Yeah,
sitting there, man, what motivates you? Because she stood out amongst everything at the service at the hotel.
yeah. There used to be a woman, she's no longer there, at our train stop, on the 3 train,
Yeah,
at 148th Street in New York City, and every day as we were getting on the train, I was getting on the train with my kids going to school, she was saying to everyone getting on the train, "God bless your day. Have a great day."
yeah, yeah,
And I just thought, I mean, this is so incredible for my kids to experience this from her every morning before they go to
yeah,
school, you know?
yeah,
Just what a gift that she's sort of commissioning
yeah,
people in this
yeah,
way as they get on the subway,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah,
And New York City, people get on the subway in the morning, they're grumpy, they're moody, and it also just gives people a sense of, yeah, of being seen and loved and
yeah,
known in a way that I
yeah,
think kind of brightened them up. So I was like, she's really, doing some city transformation here at
yeah,
a
yeah,
at
yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
micro level that's quite powerful. Yeah.
And Lauren, I love this conversation because, especially these days, entrepreneurs and tech are the hot job industries. Everybody wants to be in those industries. But
Mm,
yet, the pharmacist, the engineer, the architecture, the teacher, the nurse, the PA, all of those
mm,
things are so key to the growth of the city and the health of the city.
of course. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, one final question that I have for you, and it's a selfish question for me, especially, and this is more for as an actress and all this stuff. When you sit there and memorize a script, because a lot of times I'll try preaching and all that stuff, and you have a script or a teleprompter, you feel like you're just reading off a piece of paper. How do you make it authentic? Any tips or secret as we wrap up?
I mean, that's what I went to college for, right? That's what I
Hmm.
spent the big bucks to learn. Yeah, I mean, I
What's my
think that,
hack?
yeah, yeah. What's your hack? I mean, I don't know for a sermon. I think that, it's easier for me as an actor because really it's just about putting myself in that person's shoes. But a few tools that I learned when I was in acting school, they always said, like, describe, they called it script analysis. Describe what's literally going on, figure out what your character wants, and what are they doing to try to get it. So what is the action that they're doing to try to
Mm,
get it, right? And so I think figuring out what your character wants, and
mm, mhm,
what the other people in the scene want that conflicts with that, um is helpful. And in some ways I think the faith and workspace is similar, because we talk a lot in our book about what is the heart change that you want to see people go from and to,
mhm, mhm,
right? So you want them to go from, for example, thinking sacred work is more important than secular work, to an understanding of all work is for God's kingdom, right? Every square inch
mm,
is
mhm.
God's, right? And so, like, what are those wants that you're trying to move them from one thing to another? Yeah.
Got it, got it, got it. And how did you memorize all of that, the script, all of the lines? Is it just constantly going over it over and
Repetition.
over and over again? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Just repetition. Yeah.
yeah. Lauren, I found that a lot of times for me, even with chemistry and physics, when I had to prepare for a test, I just sat there typing out the notes. If I
Mm,
sit there and do it over and over again, like 5 or 6 times, I'll remember it, but it takes a long time to work on it.
yeah. I've found that I have to read and listen to something to memorize it typically. You know,
Got it.
I have to see it and have an auditory experience with it.
Very
So
good. Very, very
that's sort
good.
of that's my hack. Yeah.
For more information, I know they can find your book on Amazon, all of that, but where can they find information about yourself,
Mhm.
Instagram, LinkedIn, or information about Global Faith and Work?
Yeah, so Global Faith and Work is globalfaithandwork.com. And so happy for people to connect with us there. And I think the Instagram handle is CTC Faith Work,
Yeah,
or Redeemer CTC. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
where we
yeah.
are. Yeah.
What about yourself? Are you on Instagram or LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm happy for people to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
Yeah, under Lauren Gill. So
very
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Thank you, Lauren.
yeah. It's a pleasure. Yeah, have a good
We're gonna
one.
have to find some time to talk again soon in the future. All right, bye.